my good friends, I thank you for the loyalty you shown me. May it return to you 1,000-fold, and may you burn bright as comets and go down in glory with a story to tell and somebody to hold. And may all that you seek come to you in good times, with the ease of a breeze on a December day. May you outrun the past and the shadows it casts. May your sorrows collapse beneath the great wave of joy.
Stonehall's Secret Rocks by Mary Grogan. One man literally rocked his way, as captain of his own ship, to places of which most of us only dream. The other rocked the establishment as leading Australian journalist Kerry O'Brien, a powerhouse for the Labour viewpoint, a fierce defender of truth and integrity in journalism, and through his television appearances a household name in Australia. When Kerry came to Clare in 2016 in search of his ancestry, which had a 6-mile bridge connection as far as he knew, it could not be found. His great-great-grandfather, Charles O'Brien, had emigrated to Australia with his wife Nancy Nee Wilson and their 2 children, Mary, aged 6, and John, aged 1, in 1850. With an early discovery of Charles in Mahon North, a rare insertion in church marriage records of the location identified Charles as having moved to Crow Hill. Ballynooskinny is an alternative name for Crow Hill, whose southern boundary was south of the local road L7172. It was relatively easy to locate the ruins, a few scattered stones surrounded by bushes. As there are only 3 tenements recorded for the townland of Ballynooskinny in 1855, one a gentleman's residence known as Shannon Grove, another a forge, the third, the ruins, must be the O'Brien residence. The forge links with 6 Mile Bridge as Thomas Maloney, its farrier, hailed from Belvoir in that parish. It is likely that when Maloney moved to Stonehall, he brought with him Charles O'Brien as a co-worker. The marriage of Maloney's daughter to Thomas Fitzgerald ensured the continuance of the forge in the Fitzgerald name until the mid-20th century, but the family continued to live there. According to ship records, Charles O'Brien, his wife and 2 children sailed to Australia in the Emigrant in 1850. In 1766, on the 28th of September, there was great joy in another Stonehall household, which we presume to be Stonehall Castle from the description of the boy, our captain, as midshipman in the Royal Navy, a position which necessitated a high standard of education, especially of literacy, which meant his family were well-to-do business people, agents perhaps, or business associates of the Fitzgeralds or Stafford O'Brien, whose house they inhabited. Another baby was born, brother to John, aged 12, Timothy, aged 7, and Margaret, aged 2. The custom of Roman Catholics of that time to baptize a child the day after birth might not have been upheld in Michael's case. A record, the only one, of Michael Hogan in the available records, his parents Peter and Margaret ní O'Shaughnessy, shows that he was baptised in St. Mary's Church, Limerick, on the 5th of October, 1766. The youngest of 4 children. The postponement for 1 week caused by inclement weather or the child having an early infection seems reasonable. Michael Hogan of Stonehall, born 28th of September 1766, died on the 26th of March 1833. The well-researched biographies of the Stonehall sailor describe his rise, step by step, from midshipman to transporter of convicts in his own ship, to trading in goods and sometimes slaves, spices and wines as luxury items to the old rich Europeans and the nouveau riche Americans in a ship of his own. Leaving the Royal Navy after 4 years, Hogan still served the government as a privateer, having bought his own ship, and he began a lucrative career, initially between India and China, and later between India and Europe, which he carried out under different flags to evade the scrutiny of the East India Company's monopoly. It was in India that he met the first of his valuable trading associates, Sir William Richardson, whose daughter, Frances, he married. By the time he settled in New York in 1804, he had earned the title First Millionaire in America. He insisted that he made his money of $2 million from shipping merchandise, but the Society columnists maintained it was the dowry of his wife, who was regarded as an Indian princess. Hogan had a penchant for networking, seeking out valuable trading contracts from whom he learned the tools of his trade. There are many publications covering his life that describe the methods he used in making valuable trading decisions. One of these, Scottish Business Networks in Asian Trade, 1765 to 1832, details Hogan's preference for David Scott's policy of diverse country trading between India and China, which avoided the narrowness of the East India Company's regulations. Avoiding Europe for some time, Captain Hogan spent time in South Africa. Due to the English-French War, he contemplated becoming a privateer trading between South Africa and India in order to prey on the French ships. He became a partner of a trading company, Tennant and Trail, in a slave deal, which ended in a scandalous affair where what was passed for a capture of a prize taken from the French enemy ships of slaves was actually a private venture of Hogan's, for which, though he escaped blame, he is considered still to have been the main culprit. A contractor with the new British South African government, he captained 10 ships as he traded flour, spirits, spices and sugar. To this period, he attributed the raising of $2 million or 400,000 sovereigns, his supposed dowry from marriage. Trading in the Indian and Pacific Oceans was facilitated by the linkages between London, Europe, India and South Africa. Hogan's portfolio of titles were entrepreneur, ship's captain, merchant seaman and convict transporter. By 1800, Hogan had a taste of dealing with America. His first major deal had been in 1789 when he chartered an American ship to carry rice from India, a venture which failed on account of a drought and the failure of a crop. Arriving in the year 1802 or 1804, as in some records, in New York State, he opened a dry goods store in 225 Broadway and later at 52 Greenwich Street, followed by a counting house at Washington Street, trading all the time with the Pacific ports, importing spices and fine goods from the West Indies and brandies from Spain and other countries. Aged 38, upon his arrival, he created a stir in his country of adoption, evading the invitations to party. Michael and his wife Frances concentrated in making their presence felt in the commercial world. Having lived over their shop in Broadway for 2 years, they now had a separate house to their Greenwich store, joining the land speculators, numerous in American soil following the end of the war in 1783. Hogan purchased a large tract of land covering streets 121 to 127 on the banks of the Hudson for $13,000. He named the southern part Mont Alta and the northern Claremont, some say after the county of his birth, others maintain after the residence of his good friend and fellow seaman William Henry, later to be King William IV. He built an impressive house. Some say he moved it from its southern location. It was his summer residence, and the scene, according to society columnists, of some of the most brilliant social festivities in the city. Joseph Bonaparte leased Claremont in 1815, ex-King of Spain and brother of Napoleon. In 1821, Hogan sold it for the benefit of creditors. The house was to keep its high profile for many years, having been converted to a roadside inn where the high professionals of New York took a break from the city within the city. Their exclusive company guaranteed with wine at $40 a bottle and food to match in quality and price. Later democratized after the ending of the Civil War, it was a popular-sized restaurant. Ford factories on the other side of the Hudson River disregarded, its life was yet to spiral down to the level of nightclub, and with old age approaching, it was finally boarded up. It was accidentally burned in 1951, and to maintain the site as a public space, it was converted by the local authorities to a children's playground. Michael Hogan's misfortune was of a similar nature, but as would be acknowledged in his memorial, the vicissitudes of life never dampened his spirit. When land was placed on offer at a reduced rate to private parties, in order to recoup the coffers emptied by the purchase of land west of the Mississippi confiscated by Napoleon and bought back by the government, Hogan's interest was sparked. He purchased 2 large parcels in Franklin County near the Canadian border. One piece of 10,163 acres he called Bombay. A second of almost double that amount he named Hogansburg after himself. The year was 1809, and like all his other plans, he hoped this one too would increase his coffers. He had not foreseen America's second war against England, whose military events would destroy his cherished Bombay and Hogansburg. He had lost his investments in the Caribbean and South America, and he had to sell some of his property in New York City. He had to sell Claremont to pay his debtors. But unabashed, he continued to live among high society. In 1820, he was appointed as U.S. Trade Counsel to Chile, which necessitated his moving to Valparaiso, which was where he remained until the year of his death in 1833. He died in Washington in March 1833. His burial place is unknown. His wife and one of his 4 children, William, a U.S. representative, looked after his estate. A plaque in Gray Street Episcopalian Church, New York reads, "Sacred to the memory of Michael Hogan, during many years a resident of this city, born at Stonehall in the county of Clare, Ireland, September 28th, 1766. In early manhood, a bold and successful navigator and discoverer in seas then almost unknown. In maturer age, a prosperous merchant. The starting of life was not unmarked by the vicissitudes of fortune, but prosperity did not date, nor could adversity subdue his firm and constant spirit. Each quarter of the globe bore witness to his enterprise and its success, regretted by his friends, respected by his enemies. A life of stainless integrity closed at the city of Washington, March 26th, 1833 AD. His name lives on today in Hogansburg, a Mohawk Indian reservation, a hamlet within the town of Bombay in New York, created by himself, and the Hogan Islands in the Bass Strait. Two men, 2 kilometers and nearly 200 years apart, are still linked by a common thread. Their intensity of purpose and ability to negotiate the seas of change, one literally, which brought them to the top of their career. In respect to the unsavoury elements in the life of Hogan, his involvement in the slave trade and in breaking international rules of trade equivalent today perhaps to travelling on a false passport, in his case as a privateer, disguising his nationality by displaying different flags. Currently active in journalism, Kerry would say
that people who in their own world were probably reasonable human beings but were perpetrating a deep injustice on a people who some of those white settlers regarded as vermin.
Thank you.
He was referring to his own ancestral immigrants, but he could have been speaking about Hogan. The children of Stonehall School most likely never heard of their famous neighbours. Little did the more senior pupils know, as they recited the poem Valparaiso in their school books, that a man they never met lived near the school and finished his days in that place. A ship from Valparaiso came, and in the bay her sails were furled. She brought the wonder of her name and tidings from a sunnier world. Oh, you must voyage far if you would sail away from gloom and wet, and set beneath the Andes blue, or white umbrageous city set. But I was young and would not go, for I believed when I was young that somehow life and time would show all that was ever said or sung. Over the golden pools of sleep she went long since with gilded spars, into the night empurpled deep, and traced her legend in the stars. But she will come for me once more, and I shall see that city set, the mountainous Pacific shore. By God, I half believe it yet. Acknowledgements. Father Joe McMahon, who first discovered the Hogan plaque in Grace Street Church. Canon Reuben Butler, who initiated the investigation into Michael Hogan of Stonehall. Kerry O'Brien, Australian journalist. Michael Talty, Parish Office, Newmarket-on-Fergus. Authors of the following: Indian and Australian Dictionaries of Biography. The Old Merchants of New York City by Walter Barrett Clark. Records of the Cape Colony, Volume 2, 1796 to 99. Captain Hogan, Seaman Merchant, Diplomat on 6 Continents, by Michael Stiles. B.R. Tomlinson, The Empire of Enterprise. A Memoir, by Kerry O'Brien.
And last to those friends who have gone on before us, may the universe find in their favorite chorus. May we sing, till the gods can't ignore us. And may they rest, may they rest. And by resting